looks like we have people joining slowly, but we can get started. So I'm Allison Fiscalini. I'm the director of the Athena Breast Health Network and the Wisdom Study. I'm based at UC San Francisco and would like to welcome everyone to our monthly Wisdom Community Forum. These community forums happen once a month on the last Monday of every month. So we look forward to having you join us today and also for future monthly forums as well. And would love to know sort of who is on today. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, say who you are, where you're from, what brought you here today. We can kind of see who is joining us and also get to know one another a little bit. So we will get started. Just to start off first with our mission, why we are here as a wisdom community. Again, as I mentioned, these monthly forums have started over the last several months, really with a goal of trying to bring everyone together, our wisdom study team, the community, our wisdom participants, to kind of share our ideas, share our knowledge, and share our wisdom in an effort to really move together toward equity and better outcomes in breast cancer for everyone. So that is really why we're here, and really trying to have an open dialogue and learn together and share our wisdom together. So just to set the stage, why are we here? Why are we trying to make improvements in breast cancer and breast cancer screening specifically? We know that breast cancer is not one disease. There is a range of different types of breast cancer. Some can be very aggressive. Some can be much more slower growing and indolent. Some affect women at much younger ages versus later ages. And we know that there's much more that we need to learn in order to improve outcomes for all women and to try and avoid as many women getting breast cancer as possible. And we know that family history is just one piece of that puzzle. Breast cancer is complex. There are many different risk factors, and we really have a big job to do to try and disentangle and understand who is at risk for what types of cancer, how can we try and intervene and really try and improve outcomes. And then lastly, we know that breast cancer outcomes are worse in some communities. I know Ricki will probably talk about this today. We really need to figure out, again, how can we try and intervene and prevent and screen and make sure that those women at higher risk are identified and we can truly provide the services that they need to try and avoid these aggressive cancers and all cancer together. So let's just take a pause for a second and see again who has joined us today. It looks like there's some new people joining us, which is very exciting. We also have some folks who I know have joined us in the past, so just want to say welcome and welcome back to everyone. And again, if you've just joined us, we did ask if you're comfortable, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, we can get to know who is on the forum today. So our discussants today, we're very excited to have a special guest today, Ricki Fairley, who is the CEO and co-founder of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, and the newly started When We Trial movement, which she'll talk a little bit about today. We have Celia Kaplan on. She is a professor at UC San Francisco and has spent almost her entire career focused on clinical trial recruitment and enrollment, particularly in minority populations. We have Kim Rhodes, who is on from UC San Francisco as well. She is the Director of Community Engagement at the UCSF Cancer Center. And then I am Allison Fiscalini. So these are our discussants for today. But just in terms of the format, we really want to hear from you. This is not meant to be a presentation. This is meant to be a conversation. So really want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to ask their questions and also gets a chance to be part of the conversation. So please ask questions in the chat, ask questions by speaking up or raising the hand that's part of the Zoom. We do ask, though, if you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself just to limit any background noise. We are recording this so that we can share it with others who weren't able to join today. And we will have a post-meeting evaluation survey at the very end that we would love for you to fill out. We've changed it since past forums where we're not asking for any contact information anymore. We want it to be a place where you can provide your honest feedback and not feel like you have to share your name along with the feedback. So please, we encourage you at the end, and actually throughout, we'll post the link to the evaluation survey so that you can provide us some feedback, and also help us to weigh in on other topics you'd like to hear about at future forums. So please do let us know what you're interested in hearing. All right, let's see. So just to recap, our past forums have focused on a few different topics that you can see here. As I mentioned, we do take your feedback into how we develop next topics. So we've talked about breast cancer in the Black and African American community, and specifically on some recent data and an article that came out about screening Black women earlier. We've talked about other risk factors for breast cancer. And then last month, we talked specifically about breast density as a risk factor for breast cancer. And this month, we will focus on clinical trial participation, what it means, the importance of diversity and inclusion in clinical trials, and also some initiatives and strategies that are working towards improving clinical trial participation. So I will pause there. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and to put those questions in the chat or to raise your hand. All right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Celia Kaplan from UCSF. And Celia, I will let you take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so glad to be part of this forum, and please interrupt me with questions. There's nothing better than a question at the right time that kind of makes this more entertaining, for a better word. Okay, so let me start first. We're going to discuss a little bit what's a clinical trial, and NIH also calls it a clinical study that is a little bit less threatening than a trial. And it's a type of research study that tests how well a new medical approach works in people. So what characterizes a clinical trial is that is humans, participants that are part of the study. And we usually think of it as a new treatment, a new pill that will cure us, but it's more than that. A clinical trial can be about a new screening methodology, and this is what wisdom is. We are testing a more tailored type of breast cancer screening based on the women's risk compared to our usual screening. There are prevention trials, there are diagnosis, there are, of course, treatment of disease and quality of life studies. And there are also, that I didn't name here, behavioral studies that we could do and participate. And I didn't put this in the slide, but we can participate in any ways of in a trial of studies. Next. So what do the trials try to answer? It is a way to find out if the new intervention is safe. Does the new intervention do what it's supposed to do? And it is better than whatever we have currently. Which patients benefit the most? As we could see in the next slide, we are going to look at the phases of the research. Sometimes, for example, in phase 1, we don't have a comparison group. And phase 1, and I didn't say this, but a clinical trial is tested in a very systematic way. You build on what you have learned before to find out more and get to a phase where you can test it and compare in people. In a phase 1 trial, we evaluate the safety, and very few people participate. We determine whether the right dosage is to not cause too much damage or not to cause any damage to the individual. Then we recruit more people and we do what is called a phase 2 study when we look at the effectiveness of the drug. And I'm going to give the example of a drug. Then we move to phase 3 studies, and that we confirm the effectiveness. And we are all very knowledge about now about phase 3 studies. Those were our vaccines for COVID, where they compare a vaccine to, in this case, was a placebo most of the time. There was one that was not. And we confirmed effectiveness. This is a study a phase where we usually randomize individuals. That means that by chance, some people receive the new treatment and some people receive the old treatment sometimes. They compare to another drug that we know the effectiveness. And then once we have the response of that and everything is working out, is when we go to the FDA and we get approval for the drug and we start utilizing in the population. In a phase 4 study is when we look at how it's being applied in the population and what are other additional side effects that maybe we did not find before. Next, please. So in order to be able to do these studies, we need the participation of everybody. And that's why we always say the participation of minorities is essential in the study of our new treatments and in our new screening procedures. Clinical trials participants should represent the people who will use the therapy or intervention. If we don't test it on individuals of all groups, we do not really know how it is working. And participant diversity helps understand how different people respond to the treatment. Treatment are based usually on younger people, on healthier people, on high functional people. We don't have the whole distribution of individuals that can react differently to the treatment. And there has been always documented underrepresentations of older adults, of women, and minorities in research. Now, the reasons for the limited participation of this group is multidimensional. Next, please. Usually the studies on why people don't participate focus on the individual. And of course, each of us has the ultimate decision whether we participate or not in a study. It is sometimes we are not ready for it. Sometimes we want to wait. It is our prerogative. But the reasons why people do not participate is due, in many cases, by structural barriers. Is the study far away? Do we have transportation? Do we have the insurance? Some studies require that the individual be insured. For those who do not speak English, are the consent forms in the languages that people understand? Sometimes there are clinical barriers in the sense that physicians do not recommend to their patients the new trial that is in another location. People have other diseases, or sometimes there's not a trial that fits exactly our disease, so we are ineligible. And of course, there are patient barriers. On one hand is the mistrust, and the mistrust happens across the board. In my studies, I found that everybody has at some point some form of mistrust. And we as researchers try to counter that. I want to assure you that each particular study that we do has gone through a very intensive review by institutional review boards. And that's something that people sometimes do not know. Every protocol, every question that we ask has been reviewed and is being reviewed every year. There's the fear of randomization, and it's a consideration. But for example, our wisdom study allows people not to be randomized. They can still participate, they can still contribute, by participation and selecting which arm they would like to do. Fear of side effects, and that is real, but also they have been studied all along to try to minimize that. And there are concerns about costs that are real, and particularly for those that are not insured. And I think our study, for example, has tried to eliminate everything. There are no costs at all for our participants. So with that, I don't know if people have questions, and the next slide, please. So
One question that I have, Celia, is, you know, I've heard that one of the other components of barriers is just simply not being asked to participate. And I just wonder if that has been part of your research, and, you know, when asked, if there are any, you know, if there's any difference or any trends that we see in who participates in trials or not.
Thank you so much for asking that. I have been, you know, in my research, I always go with the hypothesis that minorities will not want to participate, but it shows that they are willing to participate. All groups are willing to participate. Actually, in my study, Latinos are willing to participate more than any other group. And I think that we do not ask them, and we don't think that they are willing to participate, or we have barriers as researchers, or physicians may not, as I said before, might not send their patients to a location where there are research. So when we ask people, when we go to the right places, when we work with the community, minorities participate. And again, it's very fresh in my mind, all the trials for our vaccines on COVID, and they really try, and I think they did a pretty good job in getting representation of minorities into the vaccine trials. So that's, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or opinions.
I don't see anything in the chat, but one other question that I have, or one other comment, I guess, is that I think one other component of making sure that trials are representative is not just race and ethnicity. I think there are other examples that we can bring in to demonstrate the need for representation across ages, across gender, and other examples where we've learned that representation is extremely important. I know, Dr. Rhodes, you oftentimes use an example around Ambien that I think is pretty interesting, if you're willing to share what that is.
Sure. I mean, I think the way to think about it is, you know, who is going to be using the product that is under study, because that's who we need to know how whatever the intervention is interacts with that person's physiology or their you know, other factors. And I just, as I was listening to Celia, I kept thinking about medical school, and I went to medical school long enough ago where the standard patient was a 70-kilo white man. And I remember my classmates just being so frustrated with that. It's like, why is that the standard? And the reason was because most of the trials were on, you know, average weight white men. The Ambien example teaches us a lesson. You may recall that Dr. Kaplan just referred to phase 4 trials, which we don't talk much about, but that's where you kind of look backwards and you say, okay, how is this drug going in the community? And that's really where the Ambient problem became clear, because the trials did not really include a fair proportion of women. So, you know, the population is half female. So the trial really needs to be half women if that's who's going to be using this drug. And then what we started to see, and you may recall this on the news, this kind of like sleep eating and sleep driving and sort of doing strange things while on Ambien that people didn't remember. And it turns out that disproportionately that was happening in women. And then when you look back at the trials, the reason that wasn't picked up during the trials is because women were underrepresented in the studies. And so it's really important. And I think we had a similar problem with hormone replacement therapy.
Oh yeah.
emerged, 20, 30 years later, we're finding out that, oh, the study wasn't representative of people who had underlying medical issues. And therefore, when we give this therapy in people with underlying medical issues, there are some problems that can emerge. So it's really important that wherever that intervention is going to be used, that we actually know how it's going to play out. So we don't have to find it out in phase 4 studies, looking backwards like, oops, this didn't go well because there wasn't representation in the study. So I think it's that really underscores like really the reason why like the study is much higher quality. You can rely more on the results. You can extrapolate the results to much broader populations if the studies that brought us this intervention actually included folks in the trial who look like the representative population. And quite frankly, I just want to say one other thing, because a lot of drug companies kind of let this go, right? They let the trials go, not being diverse. And I, although it's fraught, think about telling the drug companies that, no, you cannot bring your drug to market because your study was not representative. Think about how that would change the way the trials and the pharmaceutical industry, for example, would really try hard to make sure the studies are representative. But that's controversial. That's my
One other thing that comes to mind too is that I often hear that people think about research or clinical trials being for people who have a condition or are ill or have a very serious condition. And I think as Celia pointed out earlier on, there's a whole spectrum of different research studies going on. The Wisdom study is one of them, where we are recruiting a population that does not have breast cancer. It's people being screened for breast cancer. And I think that's another piece to point out too, is that you don't have to be sick. You don't have to have a certain condition to participate and really be able to contribute to the science in medicine. So that's another thing to point out as well.
This is, I also think that, I'm sorry, did I interrupt anybody with a question?
Oh, no, go ahead, Celia. I was just going to add something.
No, I think that research is a continuum and clinical trial is one of them. And as I said before, we want people to participate. A lot of trials are not come to fruition, or they have to be canceled because people, we don't recruit fast enough. And we all want our treatments to go faster, to go to market faster. But I think participation in research is a continuum, and anybody can participate in many ways: answering a health survey, participating in a focus group, donating their tissue for research, and that is within everybody's values and desires. And I think that's what I always say. We want people to participate, but there's a lot of ways that one can contribute to research. And that's important. To answer the survey about the care you guys receive, or we all receive, is very important, because that changes how we provide care to people. So I always try to say that, so that people, of course, clinical trials are great and we all want people to participate, but there's so many ways that we can all contribute to the wellness of all of us.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on the thing about wisdom. There's a couple different things about wisdom that I think are trying to address, sort of longstanding historical and structural issues in clinical trials and clinical trials research. But the thing that really got me was talking to someone on the team before I really joined, and coming to understand that what we know about breast cancer risk, in terms of, if we were able to look at your family history and your genetic makeup all together, can we make a prediction about the risk of developing breast cancer in the future? And I was stunned when I found out that because most of the data comes from white women or women of European ancestry, that there is no reliable risk predictor score for other women. And that kind of stunned me, because what it means is the tools, like the very precise tools that we might be able to use in one group to help people lower risk, be aware of risk, screen differently, doesn't apply to all women. And so one of the pieces of what could potentially come out of wisdom is the opportunity to generate this risk score that can in other populations, because it's really unfair. I mean, we have companies that will run these tests and give you back some data about your risk, but if you are of color, you can't get any information about your risk based on that data. And to me, that is just, it's kind of unacceptable.
Great. And, you know, next month we will talk about breast cancer and genetics, and that will be part of the discussion, as the work that we're doing to try and generate that evidence, to try and help to inform the data that typically has been provided by a European ancestry population. So stay tuned for next month to learn a little bit more about that. But I want to segue into introducing again Ricki Fairley. She has dedicated her life and her career to bringing awareness about breast cancer risk, particularly in the Black and African American community, and has recently launched a huge nationwide initiative to try and increase participation in clinical trials. And I think this is an awesome example of, you know, that building awareness, that building a sense of familiarity with what a trial is, trying to provide some education, but also building awareness that these trials exist and to encourage participation. So I will go back to sharing the slides, and I'm excited to have Ricki tell us a little bit more about her work and the initiative that is just launching now. So Ricki, take it away.
Hey, Allison, can I share my slides? I changed them a little bit. It's not a big deal, but.
Yep, you sure can. Hold on one second.
Of course, like last minute changes, of course. I just got some new data today, so.
Oh, great, okay. Is it letting you, hopefully?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for having me today. Thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, and I should mention Ricki has been part of our wisdom community for a while now. She I think did a webinar with us last year and has been part of a few of our discussions, and a wisdom ambassador, and has helped to promote wisdom throughout all of her conversations that she's been having. So we're excited to have you here today as well. So
thank you. It's a great thing. So Black breast cancer is a different disease, and there's a lot of research now, a growing body of research to validate that a Black breast cancer cell looks different from a white breast cancer cell. And if you kind of put all the data together, breast cancer is really the most fatal health issue for Black women, and it really deserves different kind of attention. And that's reflected in a 41% higher mortality rate compared to white women. We have a 39% higher risk of recurrence. Black women like me who've had breast cancer, I'm a 10-year survivor of triple negative breast cancer. We have a 71% higher relative risk of death compared to white women. Black women under the age of 35 get breast cancer at twice the rate, die at 3 times the rate, well before they would have had their first mammogram. Black women are 3 times more likely to get triple negative breast cancer like me, and we don't really know why. It's not always associated with the BRCA gene as it is in white women. And also, despite all these horrible factors, our physiology has not been a consideration in clinical trial research. And if you look back in history, and we dug back into when, you know, the THC drug therapies were made 20 and 30 years ago, there were no Black women in those clinical trials, right? The average rate right now is 3%. So we really don't have any data to say whether the drugs work or not. And because of these mortality numbers, guess what? A lot of the time, they're not working. So think about it. For every 100 white women that die of breast cancer, 142 Black women die, right? So to me, this is a life or death situation, right? And when you start to put the numbers together, last year, we actually made a definition of Black breast cancer. We defined it to help, people understand it a little better. And I'll just read this for you. Black breast cancer is the constellation of exposures, experiences, and lack of science. That's really important. Lack of science for Black women diagnosed with breast cancer that causes Black women to face disproportionately worse breast cancer outcomes. So pretty much, it's a horrible disease state for us. Going to the next slide. So last year we did a research study, and I appreciate the information that was just shared about the barriers to clinical research. But we did a study, and we interviewed qualitatively 50 Black women, breasties, and caregivers and their family members, and we interviewed 200 in a quant study. So we did a bunch of focus groups, a bunch of interviews, and then a big quant study. And what we learned was, the breast cancer club is not one you want to be in. You don't want to be a breastie if you can help it. But once you're in that club, it has unconditional love and trust. And I think any survivor would say that about our community. It's very tight and strong. So a lot of the calls I get with my foundation are, okay, Ricki, the doctor said XYZ, but what do you think? And I'll say, well, I'm not a doctor. I'm a marketing person. I'm not a scientist, but I can give you examples of 5 breasties who had that side effect, or 5 breasties who took that drug, or 5, or 10 breasties that went to this party, right? So the information that I impart comes with a very significant voice of trust. So if the breastie is not giving good information, then the community suffers. And so guess what we heard from breasties? Girl, don't do the clinical trial. You're going to get the sugar pill and die. And we heard that resoundingly. I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to be a lab specimen. I don't want to be in an experiment. And all that mistrust and miscommunication was coming from breasties to other breasties, which are like, oh my goodness, we can't let that happen anymore, because, and there's a lot of fear about it. There's a lot of earned medical mistrust because of the history with Black people and research from Henrietta Lacks and the syphilis study. But the fear was really based on a lack of information, just a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding, the literacy level of how a clinical trial works, what it is, and basics about it that we just had explained to us are not known among the Black breast cancer community. And so we learned also that if you talk to them and explain things in a very elementary and clear, loving way, they get it and they change their mind about it. And so we really said, okay, how can we do this? And we tested 5 different kind of communication platforms to see if we could change the tide on what people believe. But this is the kind of things we heard in our research. Whenever I would hear a clinical trial, I'd always think an experiment, right? And my oncologist never said anything about it. We also, know from other data and a lot of data that Black women are not asked to be in trials, right? And we talked about that a few minutes ago. We also learned from our research that when the patient even brings up a trial conversation to a doctor, to an oncologist, she still walks away with misinformation or not feeling educated and informed enough to make a decision. So half of the time when a breastie has to bring the conversation up to a doctor, they walk away from that conversation. They go home and say, hey, Mom, I decided to do a clinical trial. And the mom says, you're going to get the sugar pill and die. And she doesn't feel, she's not educated and equipped enough with the right information to even defend her position. So because the doctor's probably spending 15 minutes, and this is not a 15-minute conversation. So a lot to unpack here, a lot to uncover, right? In terms of how we talk about it. So we basically took all of the learnings that we got and all the insights and we turned them into positive conversation. So we launched our When We Trial movement, and it's whenwetrial.org, really to do 3 things. Acknowledge the earned mistrust. Yeah, it was really bad out there. It was bad. We didn't, we couldn't trust the medical environment, but now we can. And here's why. There were laws put in place to protect us. under explaining standard of care, explaining, guess what? There is no sugar pill in cancer research. That doctor would be under the jail if he gave you a sugar pill. So, but explaining, standard of care in simple terms, that you're not going to get a sugar pill, you're going to get the standard of care or something that may be better in addition to that, right? Dispelling the myths, and basically just educating around the basics and the benefits of research. And even saying things like, that Advil you took last week? Well, guess what, girl? It was in a clinical trial. That Tylenol you gave your baby, it was in a clinical trial. That if you do a clinical trial, they have better outcomes. You have more scans, you have more attention, you have more support around you because more people are interested in what's going on with your body. And so you get better, better care, almost a higher quality of care if you're in a trial. And also for Black women like me, any drug that we take as a Black breast cancer patient is a trial in our bodies, because the drugs I took, THC, were not ever tested in a Black body. Now we have real world evidence to show, but even the real world evidence, no one can really quantify the impact of these chemo drugs on Black bodies because they're not working a lot of the time. For me, I had stage 3A triple negative. I had a double mastectomy. I did 6 rounds of TAC. I did 6 weeks of radiation. I was told I was NED. I went for a scan 2 months later, almost a year to the day of my diagnosis. My doctor said, okay, Ricki, you have 5 spots on your chest wall. You are now metastatic. You have 2 years to live. And I said, well, I can't really die right now. I have a daughter at Dartmouth. She's a sophomore. I've got to pay for her to go to school. So me and God or somebody's got to work this out. So what have you got for me? And I ended up going to the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. One of the 3 things on Google about triple negative at the time, 10 years ago, that was, you're going to die, and you should call Haley Dinnerman at the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. They helped me find a doctor in Atlanta where I live, and she put me on some experimental drugs at the time, carboplatin and gemcitabine, which are now standard of care for triple negative. But back then they weren't in the trial, but they were experimental. And I'm here 10 years later. So I know that God left me here to do this work. So, but I had to be educated about it's okay to take these drugs, right? So dispelling the myths. And then lastly, empowering patients to advocate for themselves. And I always say, Black women, we are superheroes. We are rock stars. We wear the purple cape. We fight for everybody that we love, whether it's an election, whether it's just, I'll give you my last piece of chicken and starve, whatever for the people. So basically saying you need to do the same thing for yourself when you're sick with breast cancer or really any illness. So ultimately, we want clinical trial participation to be commensurate with the burden of disease. So I don't even want it to be commensurate with the population, because that's not going to help us. If we're getting triple negative breast cancer at 3 times the rate of white women, I'm not smart enough to do that math to figure out what the actual numbers are, but we need to be represented in a trial to the extent of the burden of disease. And that's what we want to make happen. But our movement is to really arm Black women with the information they need to really dispel these crazy beliefs that they may have had that are wrong, teach them the right ways to think about it, and then help them communicate that to their families and educate their doctors. I've been talking to a patient really for the last 2 weeks she's 37. She got triple negative stage 3C at age 36 a few months ago. And her doctor never let her know of the most amazing drug for triple negative, which is Keytruda right now, Keytruda and Trodelvy. We finally have a drug for early stage triple negative, the first one ever. Her doctor never let her know about it. And so now that she's done therapy, she's had a mastectomy, she's learning that, wow, I should have had this drug. And when she questioned her doctor about it, he pulled out a piece of paper that said, it's not on my list. How dare he? We are not getting the care that we need. And really to challenge our patients to ask and demand for health equity. And what health equity means to us, is the doctor treats a patient like how they would treat their own family. So I challenge all of our patients that we talk to, ask the doctor, I want the treatment that you would give your mom or your auntie or your daughter or your grandmother. That's the treatment I want, because that's what health equity really is. So all those things are wrapped up in our website. And we wrote this manifesto. This is actually for me and my daughters when I was sick. But we wrote this manifesto to really just, to motivate Black women. And all of our creative kind of reflects what we're saying in these words. So I'll read them to you, okay? Historically, when Black women set our minds on solving a problem, we always succeed. From freeing slaves via an underground railroad, to fighting for equality in schools, to ensuring the victory of candidates who have our best interest at heart. We don't try, we do. But for years, Black women have been dying at alarming rates from a killer hiding in plain sight, breast cancer. Black women are more likely to die from breast cancer than white women, partially because we are not considered when life-saving cancer drugs are being developed. If we want to change this disturbing reality, we must demand to be included in clinical trials. This is a matter of life and death for Black women. And as always, we must count on each other to save ourselves. Eradicating Black breast cancer isn't about a month, it's about a movement. When we trial, we set a new standard of care. When we trial, we do it for our daughters. When we trial, we choose life. When we trial, we defy the odds. So all of our creative is kind of based on those words. And we built our website and our ad campaign really to put the facts out there, but do it in a loving way. Here's what you really need to know, breast cancer patients. Here's what you really need to know. And here's how to ask for the care that you deserve. So we've had a pretty robust campaign, and I'll show you some of the numbers. And I'll actually I have a radio ad that we're going to launch tomorrow, a radio ad, but you can kind of see some of the ads. This one's my favorite. Black women don't have to die from breast cancer with the missing mom, right? We don't like that at all. So we've been in the market since January 26th, and we know that we've had about almost 7,200 visits to our website. And I'm really proud to say that we have 176 clinical trial searches. So we basically put 3 different portals on our website because, you know, the overall cancer trial website is horrible, right, to get into. So we have a portal to breastcancertrials.org. We have 2 portals from the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, one for early stage, one for metastatic, and one from Citizen, our partner Citizen. And so we try to make it easy for a person to apply for a trial. And so you can see that our numbers are pretty good. Our conversion rate on social media is about 13.5 engagement, which is the average engagement is less than 2%. But I'm really, we didn't really know what to expect with these numbers, but I'm really proud to say that almost got 200 people who've actually searched for a trial on our page. So we're hopefully making headway. And we haven't spent a whole lot of money yet, really only about $5,200. I'm so blessed to say that we've raised and gotten a lot of support from pharmaceutical companies to give us the money to do this work. And we're really trying to make a difference in how we talk to Black women. And we really want to be where they live, work, play, and pray. We did an episode of our show. I have a web series called The Doctor Is In. It's on every Wednesday night at 6:00 Eastern time. And my co-host is Dr. Monique Gary, and we talk about anything and everything breast cancer. So we had an episode, we actually had April Ryan come in, the White House correspondent, and moderate our show. And we've had almost 70,000 views of our show, and you can kind of see the numbers here. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, so people keep watching it. And then we've had, these are just the numbers from our press release and the media coverage that we've gotten. So we've gotten a lot of good coverage, and people are hearing us. And we start our radio campaign tomorrow, and we're going to be blasting our message in 10 cities across the country. So what's next? We are looking for partners. I want to be where Black women live, work, play, and pray. I ran marketing for Coke for many years. And one of the mantras for Coke was they wanted Coke to be within arm's reach of the consumer. So if you think about where Coke is, it's in your refrigerator, it's at the gas station, it's at the 7-Eleven, it's in the grocery store, it's at the drugstore, it's everywhere. That's where I want our message to be. And so we're working really hard to do that. And I know that we can't do it alone. So we're so happy to have the Wisdom Study and breastcancertrials.org and Dr. Esserman as partners in getting this message out to the world. Our radio campaign again starts tomorrow. And we're doing an outreach in 10 cities. So if you are in one of these cities and want to do a program, we're actually going to help fund programs that are already in place. So for example, instead of trying to drop in Atlanta and say, come listen to us, we're partnering with a mega church there where they already have a Women's Day promotion in a church. we're bringing in the links and the deltas and the AKAs and basically helping them fund their activity so we can bring our message there. And we're doing that in these 10 cities across the country. We are starting a roadshow in July, well, really the end of June. We're going to be at Essence Fest, and we're going to do some really cool things there. We're going to be at the National Urban League Convention in DC in July. And then, Black people congregate on Martha's Vineyard. There's like this bougie Black thing that happens the third week of August. So we're going to be there where there's a lot of Black influencers to take our message to their world. We actually are going to do, we actually worked this out today. We're going to do a legislative session at the Congressional Black Caucus in September in DC. And then we have a bunch of episodes on our show coming up. International Clinical Trials Day is May 20th. Dr. Esserman's going to be on our show on the 11th of May. Congresswoman Robin Kelly, who has a clinical trial diversity bill that she just launched into Congress, and the Black Researchers Association are going to be on May 18th. And then we're going to do these live shows. So that's kind of what we're doing. But we are like crazy person. This is Belle. She's upstairs. I'm at her house right now. This was actually 2 years ago. She's 4.5 now. And 2 weeks ago, we were in the shower. I live at the beach. We're always naked around each other. So I don't know, for whatever reason, we're in the shower with her and her 2.5-year-old sister. And she also has a 1-year-old baby sister who just turned 1 last week. So, and my grandma name is Dovey. She said, so Dovey, how come you don't have those things on your boobs that baby heart sucks on? So we had our first genuine conversation about breast cancer at Belle. Those things on my boobs, they were sick. They made me sick, so we had to cut them off. And we had this long conversation about breast cancer. The first one, I had surgery, I did this, I had to take a lot of meds, whatever. And she went to school, of course, and told the whole class, told her teacher all about it. And she's talking about it. And she's 4.5. So can't start early enough. And I want her talking about it because she's my purpose. I got about 10 years before she gets boobs to get rid of breast cancer. So I work like a girl, fight like a girl every day for her. So if you want to hear our radio, I'll play it for you. I literally just got it. Let me see, I'm going to stop the share. And
As
go
you're
to
pulling
my,
that up, Ricki, thank you so much. That was awesome. You are so busy. I think you're going to do amazing work, and we're so excited to be part of it too.
Thank you. I'm a crazy person, right? But here, I'll play this for you real quick. It's just like 30 seconds. Let's see.
Okay. Are you playing it? Because we can't hear it if you are.
You can't hear it?
No.
Before you share, you need to click the box that says share audio as well.
I have my audio on. Okay, you'll hear it.
No,
You'll hear it.
it's actually a box that you have to click within the share screen function. So it's
Oh,
not-
really? Okay. Okay, I
So when
didn't
you
share
go
it.
to-
Okay. Do you want to hear it or do you want to keep going? Answer questions.
Let's try to hear it. Yeah. And we
Okay. Let's see. So go to share screen.
Yeah. And then
Oh, I see. Share sound. Okay, I actually thought that was clicked. Okay, here we see. Let's see if this works better.
can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
No. Well, if you send us the link, we can share it out, or if it goes live on any radio website, we can share it out to everyone too. Hopefully everyone hears it anyway, but
Yeah, I probably have to share the screen where I'm pulling the video from, but no worries. It's the same. It's really the manifesto in 30 seconds.
yeah. So I wanted to see if anyone who's listening has any questions for Ricki or Celia. I think the work that everyone is doing is awesome. And again, it comes back to how do we build awareness? How do we build trust? How do we have the conversation and familiarize people with what a clinical trial is, what a trial is? And I think too, as I mentioned before, expanding it beyond just those who are sick, and how do we have education around, participation in research that doesn't necessarily require that you be sick or be dealing with a certain illness or disease. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute or put a question in the chat. I'm seeing lots of praise for you in the chat, Ricki.
Thank you.
Great work that
Join
you're
my
doing.
movement. Go to our website and sign up and join our movement.
Yeah. You know, one question I have for you, Ricki, is, you know, I know that a lot of your work is focused on breast cancer trials and those with breast cancer. I just wondered if you know, you've been involved in Wisdom and you've been helping us to spread the word. You know, what motivates you about the Wisdom study specifically? You know, where do you see the potential for this, you know, helping to improve the way in which we're assessing risk and diagnosing breast cancer?
Oh, it's all good. I mean, it really starts with screening and understanding her story. And, you know, Black families do not talk about health at the kitchen table until somebody's got their leg amputated or they're in hospice or they're dying or dead, right? We don't talk about it. And so these conversations really have to happen. And that's really what we try to talk about on our show to encourage it. So the work that you guys are doing is so important to make these conversations happen, make people talk about it. And we have an HBCU internship program. So we had 15 interns last year. We have 11 now. And they're these like amazing little badass brainiac children. I shouldn't call them children because they're all like 19, 20 years old, but they are, their purpose is really not only to post on social media, and a lot of them are posting about when we trial, but building awareness, and they're kind of within their set of social media friends, but also we asked them to make a video with their moms and their grandmas and their best friend. And in every case we found so far, it was the first conversation they had with their mom about breast health. So I really believe that our young women are going to be the conduit into Black families to talk about health. So mom, yeah, what is her story? Who had cancer in our family? You know, what did Grandma Pookie die of? What was that thing down there? Right. And like force the conversations to happen. Mom, did you get your mammogram? Grandma, you know, how did this person die? How did grandpa die? So we really are depending on them. And so we're trying to teach them what they need to know and ask, you know, the questions they need to ask. And so really the initial part of when we trial, and this is what we've done for the last month and a half, basically, is kind of target the breastie community on digital media. And now our media will open up to the world because we're going to be on Clear Channel Radio starting tomorrow, targeting young Black women on Black stations, on hip hop stations, on, you know, where they work, live, play, and pray, because we really believe it's important to get the message out there. And we actually, so Dr. Sarah Horton, she actually just joined, you know, Quantum Leap Health, and she's on our medical advisory board. I've known her for many years. And so she actually, we've been talking back and forth in terms of how we can make the Wisdom study part of our roadshow, part of our town hall roadshow. So we're talking to you guys about maybe having that, because it would be great to sort of fill the whole scheme of, you know, not only do you have to learn about clinical trials, but you also have to screen. Hello, you know your breasts, know your bodies, and talk about it with your family. So hopefully we can do something together to just join forces. You know, I call Touch an Alliance because I have a really big sandbox and I want everybody to come play with me and build bigger sandcastles. I know that I can't do this alone, and we have to break down the barriers between all of these little breast cancer factions and work together to do this work. Oz is over there, nobody has breast cancer, and we have to be linked in arm to get to the Yellow Brick Road. And my story for that is, if you you know, when you go to the symphony and you're sitting in the audience and the flutes are playing beautifully in their corner and the pianist is playing beautifully in her corner and the drums are playing beautifully, but when you're in the audience, it sounds like noise, right? Then the conductor comes in, he silences everybody, and everybody just makes beautiful music. Well, I don't necessarily want to be the conductor. We have plenty of conductors in this space, but I want to make the music. And that takes practice and trust and communication and working together, but all working towards this common goal. So let's do it together. And so the more I can, pretty much every program we have in Touch is with another with another partner or more, because I think it's so important. So I so value our relationship with you guys, with the Wisdom Study, and that we can do this work together to, you know, get this message out. There's too much work to do it alone, you know?
Agreed. And, you know, just bringing a couple, for those who aren't as familiar with Wisdom, I'll just put up real quick that some of the information that we have, and we will share Ricki's information as well about when we trial, and as we get links to different things, we will send that out too. But, you know, again, I think as Ricki said, and as Celia said as well, making sure that people are aware, are invited to participate, is one of the key things. And that's, one of the asks that we have of our wisdom community is to help us share the word about wisdom and to help us build our community even further so that everyone is aware and everyone knows that participation is open to every woman across the country who's between 40 and 74, who has never had breast cancer. We've tried to reduce as many barriers to clinical trial participation as possible. There still, can be some, and as Celia noted, it's always someone's choice, but this is a study that should be something that hopefully everyone wants to participate in, and to help us understand who's at risk and to be able to identify those who we can intervene on earlier and hopefully help prevent the development of breast cancer. So our website is here, our social media handles are here. We will send this information out as well as the When We Trial information out as well. And really appreciate everyone participating today. I did put the survey link in the chat. It's an anonymous survey just giving feedback on today's session. If you could please fill that in. And also we have a poll for everyone. If you can help, I think it'll launch here in just a second, help us to determine what some topics will be for our next sessions. As I mentioned, next month we will have Dr. Lisa Madalinsky joining us on genetics and family history. But if you can indicate which of your top 2 to 3 choices you may have for future community forums, we would love to hear from you. Again, we base our decisions on and scheduling of these forums on the topics that matter most to those who are attending, and really encourage you to weigh in. And one more ask of everyone is, we are trying to grow this community, not just of participants in the wisdom study, but of our community forum in general. And I think tasking everyone with inviting at least one other person to join you next time in these forums, or sharing the information about wisdom or When We Trial with at least one person after this would be wonderful, and will help all of us continue to learn and share our wisdom, both wisdom from the community as well as wisdom from those who are helping to conduct the wisdom study. It's a general and iterative sharing back and forth, and would love to have as many people participate as possible. I think with that, we will end the poll, and let's see what we have here. So I don't know if you guys can see the poll or not, but it looks like there's a lot of interest in nutrition and healthy living, breast cancer risk reduction, genetics and family history. So we'll start that series off next month. Breast imaging technologies, and we'll look to see what some of those other answers are too. So we look forward to continuing this conversation, continuing to engage with everyone who is here, plus others that you invite to be part of this conversation as well. We really thank you for being part of it, and appreciate your time and your input today. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone. Thanks for having me. You guys be blessed. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Ricki. Thanks for being here.
Check the breasts that you love. Great. I know you have a pair.
Thanks, everyone.